Now we are almost ready to start the finals. I would like to see other contestants connecting to watch this great presentations that have been selected in the groups. Let us give a couple more minutes for everyone to join us. For I see now there are 40 people. So we have connected the team Latvia that has been the winner in the room 1. Congratulations. And we are ready to give you the floor. So whenever you are ready, please start.
So we can start, right? Thank you.
Yes,
Give us few seconds. We have to solve few technical issues.
of course, of course. So mostly we have had a little delays while conducting this round due to some technical issues. Oh, you're ready, yeah?
Oh, no. Can you please return to the initial slide? We are not changing the slides, as I understand.
We have given you the control. No? Do you want to control the slides yourself or us to help you?
We will change them by ourselves.
Okay.
Can we be seen?
Well, I don't see you yet.
Can you please turn our camera on? I think you have the permission to do that. Am I correct?
I will try if I can. Well, no, I can't. I can disconnect your sound, but this won't help.
Can you please turn off the share screening now and then give us the control? It seems that there's some kind of bug in Zoom where we cannot enable our camera if we haven't enabled it. Okay.
Mhm.
So it seems that we cannot start our video because the host has stopped it. So could you solve this particular issue?
Well, I've asked to try. Uh, Give us a couple of minutes.
So we currently can't enable our video camera. Oh, thank you. Yes. Okay. So now we can start, if you would be so kind and turn again the presentation on.
Oh, you look wonderful.
Slides. Oh, it seems that we don't have the controls now. Did you give us the permission to?
We have given you the control.
Okay, so we just, I think.
Yeah, everything works.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Dear panel, judges and observers, with 28 million infected and almost a million dead, combating coronavirus so far is the most important issue that IEO has ever tackled. It doesn't even come close to Hyperloop and youth banking issues. We have determined a pricing strategy for our client, and we think it is worth a shot. Next slide. To determine the best pricing strategy, we have assessed these 4 key issues. First, we conducted basic market research on the vaccine market from the end of this year up until 2025. Second, we examined our key competitors to ensure a long-lasting advantage in the vaccine market. Third, we assessed the costs of vaccine production to calculate a competitive price that we can offer to the markets. And lastly, combining all these factors together and taking into account geographical prioritization, we developed a flexible pricing strategy. Next.
Given that the mandate will be 2 doses per person, and each person will have to get vaccinated annually, the global demand will trend toward 15.8 billion doses a year. But in the beginning, we have to account for some initial inefficiencies that result in wastage. There are already contracts that have been pre-ordered by governments of about 2 billion doses in total. However, in the chart, we can see that this doesn't even come close to meeting the demand. Due to the scarcity of supply, the WHO has developed a model for the rollout of the vaccine, under which, in the beginning of 2021, priority will be given only to healthcare workers and those in higher risk groups, such as people over the age of 65. For example, in the UK, this would come out to about a market size of about 13.5 million people, or roughly 20% of the population. Next.
Here you can see our 5 biggest competitors, ranked based on their presented risk to our client. They have all secured contracts with governments, which means that they already have sizable market shares. Competitiveness depends on the price each company can offer, as well as their potential production capacities. We have determined these numbers based on the information available publicly and inferring from the orders the governments have placed. So later, when we talk about geographical prioritization, keep in mind that we have to target countries that haven't yet signed a significant contracts with these competitors. Next slide.
The price structure is made up from 2 parts, the cost and the profit margin. The cost is further split into fixed and variable costs, with fixed costs being the bigger one. Fixed costs consists mainly of research and development, of construction of new facilities, and the finance costs of acquiring finances. And varied costs consists mostly of labor, raw materials, and the costs for upkeep. Now, here we can see our formula that we use to determine the price of the vaccine. It's quite flexible. The coefficient K is actually our profit margin, and it's dependent on country and time. The wealthier the country and the earlier it is in the crisis, the higher the coefficient, and thus the higher the price. Our costs were estimated by looking at historic data as well as industry averages, and those can be seen in the appendix. The cost for one vaccine in the first year of production is $4.48.
So given the costs already stated by the previous speaker, we finally arrive at a price target in the short term of $6.7 and a profit margin of around 50%. This is in the short term, meaning that until the end of the year 2021. This is based on three main reasons. First, we looked at the industry-wide average profit margins, and we believe that 50% is a reasonable estimate. The second factor was the potential price of other competitors, since by these numbers we are the second most competitive firm behind AstraZeneca, the Oxford vaccine, meaning that we can secure a larger profit margin without ever compromising our clients' potential market share, means that we can offer this product due to an insatiable demand in the short term. Reason number three is that we see that initially a small number of competitors will be able to supply the vaccine at higher quantities. For example, only 5 of these firms out there have signaled that they are able to supply more than 100 million in the short term, meaning in the first 6 months after beginning production. Seeing that all the rest of our competitors have set goals of around 1.2 billion vaccines by the end of 2021, we believe that it is reasonable to assume that we can also meet this capacity, and we believe that we will reuse this short-term profit in order to raise this capacity even further. So which parts of the world are we prioritizing? When looking at the markets in the graph, you see that the United States and North American markets are primarily covered. Europe has also met half of the capacity. However, we still have significant opportunity to tap into this market by providing around 800 million vaccines by the end of 2021. So the rest of our quantity which is produced is around 400 million, and this we believe should be targeted towards Asia, given the shortage and given the approximate amount that companies can produce there in the short term is only around 1 billion or so in a continent of over 4 billion people. We believe that we can tap into this market as well. So why are these countries highlighted in the map going to buy from us in the first place? That is because Europe and Asia have the highest purchasing powers, demand, and we have the second most competitive product out there. Next slide, please.
In the midterm, we expect the playing field to change. To begin with, there will be new entrants in the market, which will increase the overall competition, decrease our market share, and erode our profit margins from the current 50% to around 25%. Also, moving from short-term to midterm, we expect to move our primary focus to Asia. We also expect our production capacity to increase to 1.25 billion units as a result of planned development investments. And we will also shift our operations to other regions of the world where the demand is yet to be fulfilled, like Oceania, South America, and Africa. Next.
Similarly, in the long run, the number of competitors continues to increase, leading to a further increase in the supply, and thus the price will need to be lowered even further to $4.64 per dose, while the company expands fully globally, tapping all available markets and increasing total quantity to about 1.3 billion doses. Even in the long run, we still expect to retain our position in the top 3 companies by market share, even though the absolute value of market shares will decrease. Next.
To summarize, we target regions that will have the highest possible profit margin and where there is no initial competition. We steadily increase outputs of vaccine for years to come as we understand the high competitiveness of COVID-19 vaccine market. With our pricing strategy, the company will be profitable. Nevertheless, the profit margin will decrease in time. Our profitability in 5 years will fall from 50% to 10%. We determined 3 pricing strategies for the short term, mid-term, and long term respectively. In the short term, there will be fairly low competition, which means we can sell the majority of vaccines at the price of $6.70 per dose to European and Asian countries, thus ensuring a high profit margin. In the midterm, there will be more an increase of competition, making our region-specific market share either decrease or stay constant. And this will most likely bring our profit margins down to 25%, as there are more substitutes available in the market. And that's why we will enter new markets, namely Oceania, South America, and the whole of Asia. In the long term, there will be even more firms competing, decreasing our profit margin further to 10%. The vaccine will be increasingly accessible, so we will have to restructure our strategy accordingly, concentrating on low and middle income countries. And with this, we would like to conclude our presentation. Thank you for your attention, and please feel free to ask questions if you have them.
Thank you, Team Latvia. Thank you for your great presentation. So, judges, who wants to start asking the question?
Hello to everyone. Guys, great job. I want to just, I'm curious about the global market demand for COVID-19 vaccine. So you came up with a number of 17.1 billion doses per year in 2020. So could you explain how did you come up with this number?
Well, since every person will have to receive 2 doses a year, then the demand will be 2 times the population, and thus the 15.8 billion figure. However, as I said, it will only actually approach this figure later on after 3 to 5 years. At the beginning, however, there will still be inefficiencies because there may be various inexperienced. It is a new vaccine, and so there might be some issues with wastages at the beginning that will be improved upon later. So we estimated about 8% of these wastages, which is how we arrived for the number at 2020, and then that decreases slowly to 2021, and so on and so forth. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, okay, thanks. And for the cost side, you mentioned that you have fixed and varied costs, and I don't see the transportation cost.
Yes.
Like maybe your production will be just.
It could be either of the costs. We also assume the opportunity, the possibility that we sell to someone else who is taking care of the transportation costs. So that's not a part of the business what we are doing, but it can certainly be one of the variable costs, but it would not take up a significant portion of the whole costs.
Okay. And what is the profitability like of this investment project?
Yes, so we calculated that the return on investment will be 22% in 5 years for this specific vaccine, as in 21 and 22 we will have the biggest profit margins, which will be approximately 50%. And then in the long term, when there will be many competitors entering in, the profit margin will be less. So we calculated that the profits will be 6.7 billion with our prices, and return on investment will be 22% in 5 years.
Mm-hmm. How did you come up with the assumption that every person will get vaccine twice a year?
This is the worst case scenario because it is presumed that our vaccine will require 2 dosages in order to be effective. So, So that's why we chose this as the demand mark that will be requested.
Okay. And for competitors, so the quality of the Pfizer vaccine, for example, it will be the same. Like Pfizer also will use like 2 doses of vaccine per person.
So as I understood, then this our estimate of 2 dosages per year comes from the fact that the WHO or the World Health Organization has put this as a requirement for all the vaccines, and this is like the minimum requirement you have to have that this vaccine lasts at least like half a year. You have to have these 2 dosages. So we assume the worst case scenario here. So yeah, that's our assumption underlying this presentation.
Okay, so thank you. Well done.
Yeah. And one question, how do you cope with the large demand in the short term? Because, I mean, this demand for this vaccine is very large in this year, but not in the long term.
We recognize, yes, that as we already stated, the demand in the short term cannot be met by any number of competitors currently out there. This is simply not possible by the data that we gathered in the status quo and all the materials that were also provided prior to the presentation. So we see the demand is sort of insatiable. Yeah, so we get all our vaccines out there and we still do not cover this. However, I think this is not a problem for our specific firm because they can't sell all the vaccines. They actually don't have to compete that much with other competitors because they're not competing really against each other. They're competing against who's going to bring the vaccine faster. Yeah.
And to add on, we are not expected to expand as quickly as possible because we understand that there are 211, if I'm not mistaken, already vaccines in development, and 31 is going through clinical trials, which means that in years to come, it is not quite profitable for us to invest in expansion for creation of COVID-19 vaccines, as there will be too much competitors that will fill up this demand gap.
Okay,
I think that was your continuation of your question. So I hope it brings some useful information to you.
Hey guys, thanks again for the presentation. Great job. My question is goes back to the demand. It's just I'm just curious, why didn't you predict that demand would drop? So basically that the disease would die out like Ebola. What was your reasoning behind that?
Well, we are not necessarily predicting that it will die out. That is why that the people will still have to be vaccinated yearly, because the expected the estimated time that the vaccine will be effective is for a year. But then, if the vaccine is if coronavirus is still around, then people will have to get vaccinated again until, of course, if it is possible to eradicate the virus entirely, then of course until then. But it is realistically impossible to make predictions about so far into the future. But the regimen for vaccinations will still be once a year for as long as coronavirus is still there.
And to add on, this sudden drop was accounted for the inefficiencies, meaning when you first want to vaccinate somebody with this kind of vaccine, we can't predict all the risks. So we assume that some of them will fail. There will be more vaccines that will fail because the vaccine is brand new. So it means that if a country wants to vaccinate all its people, it will require to get some more of them to fulfill this demand. But we, on the other hand, will understand what's wrong with the vaccine and how we can upgrade it in such sense that this percentage of errors decrease. And that's why we presume that based on our ability and all the company abilities to adapt to current situation, the overall demand will drop
due to the solvents of the inconsistencies and failures of the vaccine that will be had because of the initial stages of vaccination.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, judges. We have one more we can take one more question.
Of course, yeah, sure.
What is going to be your plan if there is another company who will produce a vaccine, but with the same quality of yours? What's going to be your price strategy for that? And the price for their vaccine is going to be a little bit lower than yours.
The answer to that question is that our initial predicted or expected margin, the profit margin we established is 50%. So we actually have some room to breathe. If another vaccine comes across which is cheaper, we can actually cut this margin and in order to make our price more competitive.
And maybe to add on that, simply based on the quantities that we are facing there, this task assumes that our company that we don't know exactly which it is at least, as we estimated, one of the 3 or 5 earliest firms who get in there the earliest. So it means that, I mean, 5 firms cannot cover all the demand that we estimated in the beginning of our presentation. So we didn't really believe that it would be a problem that a single competitor could undercut all the others. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So thank you, Team Latvia. You had a great presentation and good answers to the questions of the panel. Thank you. So we will wait for another team, the next team. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Dear participants, give us 5 minutes to grade the previous team, and then in 5 minutes we will start the next presentation. While we are grading, please check the presentations and give the rights to the presenters to change the slides. So, dear participants, I guess we, as judges, we are ready to start the next presentation. So, Team Bangladesh, whenever you're ready, you can start.
Sure, thank you. We're just waiting for the screen control and the presentation. Perfect. Okay. So I guess we shall begin now. Greetings to everyone. We are Team Bangladesh. And today we have been provided with a case of a big pharma corporation who are our client, and they are quite close to a vaccine production, and they are quite certain that they're successful. We have been provided with this challenge to make sure that we provide them with a price for the COVID-19 vaccine. And now I'm going to help you through the macro overview of what were our considerations towards this particular study. Pardon the table of contents. So first, we're going to look at the market size. Now, we are assuming that we are a US-based company, and our market size is not only for the US, but we also have a non-US market, but we're keeping that reserved for later. We are also going to look at the competitor analysis. We are also going to look at the participants' pricing strategies, but not only for the short run, but also for the mid and the long run. And then finally, we are going to have a look at the finances. Now, moving on to my colleague for the market size analysis.
Greetings, it's nice to be here. So if you look at the market size for COVID-19 vaccine, we all know it's a huge market, but we have segmented into two portions. We are going to look at US first, where we will be producing. Now, considering we have a patent in US, because we are considering that we are the first one to provide in the market. So now we have a total population of 328 million. According to a research done by the BBC, we know that a country needs around 60 to 70% of its population vaccinated in order to stop or prevent the growth of the disease. So we have a serviceable available market of 197 million. But we have compared our production capacity with a similar scaled pharmacy, which is AstraZeneca, who is willing to produce 300 million doses. Now, 300 million doses will basically serve 150 million people. So considering the similar kind of production capacity, we are considering that we will be supplying 150 million to the US market. Now, if we look at the non-US market, we have India, UK, and Brazil. We have chosen these three countries just because they have a high number of COVID-19 cases. Now, the total population in these three countries is 1,629 million. Now, the serviceable market is 1,140 million, but our overall production capacity is to serve 300 million. So the first 150 million is for the US market, and the second is for the non-US market. So again, we are producing for 150 million people. Now, this is the market analysis. Now, I'm passing over to my colleague. We'll discuss the different pricing strategies.
Hi. So so to determine a price for a vaccine, we went through a bunch of pricing strategies. I'll be telling you which ones we considered, why we did not go through those strategies, and which we finally ended up with. The first one we considered was value-based pricing. But because this vaccine has such a high value, we decided not to give it such a high price because of purely ethics and social responsibility. The second strategy we considered was price skimming, where we entered the market with a high price. But because there's going to be a lot of competitors in this market for the vaccine, we decided that was not the best strategy to go through. The third strategy we considered was penetration pricing, which is more the opposite, where we entered at a low price, but gradually went over higher. But because the rate of COVID-19 is going to decrease over the years, we decided, gradually increasing price was not the way to go again. So lastly, the strategy we decided to use to determine our price was a cost plus pricing. This strategy says that it has us giving a price that will cover our production costs and will also help our client enjoy profit margin to cover all the other R&D costs. This is the socially optimum price. This is the price by which everyone can, in a market segmentation, will be able to afford. Now I'll be passing to my colleague once again.
Sorry, the screen isn't changing. Yes. So as my colleague discussed, alternative 4 is the optimum pricing strategy. Now, we have considered our benchmark to be AstraZeneca, who is also producing 300 million to the US, but its total production capacity is to produce 600 million doses. That's our consideration. Now, considering the same production level, we have decided to calculate our cost per unit with our research cost being 1.4 billion and our unit manufacturing cost is $2.5. So the total cost is distributed among our total output, and we get the per dose value to be cost to be $4.8. Now, as per CDC, one vaccine shot isn't enough. We need 2 vaccine shots, 2 shots to make a fully vaccinated person. So what we will be doing is we will be basically selling 2 shots for 1 vaccine. So our cost for a vaccine is $9.6. Now we decided to charge a 230% markup, and that's because we want to keep prices low in the developing countries so that we can cross-subsidize this high revenue into the lower income countries. Now the price of the vaccine comes around to be $32 with this markup, and our estimated revenue from the US market is 4.8 billion. Now I will be passing over to my colleague who will discuss the non-US market.
Sorry, apologizing. I seem to be having some technical issues. Now let's look at our non-US market. We have India, we have Brazil, and we have the United Kingdom. So looking at, since we've already talked about market size and expected revenue, let's move on to pricing. Our prices are kept low in developing and emerging economies by cross-subsidizing with developed economies. Now, we are basing the pricing on gross national income. Gross national income is the lowest out of the 3 countries in India. So subsequently, we've provided a price of 18 USD. And looking at the emerging economy, Brazil, which has a slightly higher GNI per capita, we charge a price of USD 25. And now looking at the developed nation, the United Kingdom, where GNI per capita is the highest, it's a developed economy. So we charge a price of $28. Passing on to my colleague.
Thank you. Now we're looking at competitions. Now competitions are everywhere. And many other companies such as Sanofi, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and BioNTech have already agreed and created agreements and declared their prices, as you can see on the table. But we are selling patented vaccines. So in the short run, there's no competitions. But in the mid run, once a patent runs out, we are going to have a competition. So in this oligopolistic market, instead of price competing and harming the client, we suggest that our client cooperates with other companies and agree on a fixed price. That ensures a price reject structure. Competitors in the long run might end up thinking about breaking the collusion. So what they might do is that they engage in non-price competitions. And we suggest that our client goes for partnerships with governmental institutions, other social fair organizations, and multilateral developmental organizations. Now, we are going to look at the new pricing strategy. Now, this is fairly simple. There's a lot of calculations, but what we are mostly interested in is that in the long run, we're going to see a fall in the market share. We have put all our data in this slide. Now we're finally going to look at the finances.
As my colleagues have already suggested that our clients should go for a cost plus strategy, we have looked at and analyzed that 3 different scenarios, which is the optimistic case, the base case, and the pessimistic case. The optimistic case being the one where we get subsidized or funded by some external organizations, which is going to highly reduce our cost and resulting in a faster payback period of 2.3 years, and the pessimistic one in which competitors, due to competitions, our revenue falls and the payback period being increased to 6.1 years. In the base case, which is the one we are suggesting would happen, we would get a payback of payback in 3.5 years, which returns of up to 14.35% at a gross margin of 70%, excluding the R&D costs. As you can see, the projected cost of the year and the revenue for the year, we would get a profits of 5 billion USD per year. Now moving to my colleague for the executive summary.
Time for the executive summary now. Keeping the time shortages in mind, what I like to end up with is that I like to thank all of you on behalf of the whole team and myself, Darpan Barua, and I'd like to name my unnamed colleagues, which is Nazif Ishrak, Rami Zaman, and Faras Chaudhry and Esper Jawa. Thank you.
Thank you, Team Bangladesh. So let's move on Q&A session. So judges, floor is yours.
Also, I'd like to request that please excuse our technological incompetencies. We are adapting to the situation just like the Olympiad is.
That's
Thank
okay,
you, guys.
thank you.
Yep, thank you, guys. And my first question is, why do you divide your production for the countries by 50 and 50? You're saying that in USA, you're going to sell like 150 million doses, and the rest of the countries in India, UK, Brazil, the same 150. How did you decide to split by 50-50?
Thank you for the very good question. So the basic thing that we considered was that we have a patent in the US. So we wanted to have a large proportion of our supply in the US, but we know that we cannot have patent in other countries because there's a lot of competition, and also the countries are trying to develop their own vaccines. Now, what we proposed was that, and our production capacity is limited. We have only 150 million extra after supplying to US. Now, what we wanted to do was we wanted to rent our license to other third-party pharmaceutical companies. For example, in India, we have Cipla Pharmacy, and in Brazil, we have Brazil Pharmaceuticals Company. And then we would be charging a signing off price and a royalty of 10%. So from there, we can cover up a lot of profits. But the main thing is that the market is huge and our production capacity isn't much. So we didn't consider of taking a large proportion of that market. That's the main reason.
Okay, thanks. And you're saying that in a slide where you're saying like cost per unit, you said that the initial cost of producing this vaccine is 1.4 billion. Where did you get this number?
Yes, I would like to ask my finance expert.
We have looked at, usually we know that the vaccine development costs are huge, but since the COVID-19 vaccine is being done at an accelerated pace, due to the small amount of time, the costs have been reduced. We have looked at the R&D costs of other competitors in the market, such as Pfizer, who are having an R&D cost of 1 billion USD, and they have also signed a contract with the US government. So assuming that and taking our costs into account, we have proposed that our cost of R&D would be 1.4 billion.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, please. And you're saying that you're going to differentiate the price among the countries. What do you recommend us to prevent this when the companies in these low pricing countries going to resell your vaccine in the countries in a developed countries? For example, companies going to buy our vaccine in India for $18 and resell it in USA for 50, yeah, you said.
So basically, you are asking about the problem of arbitrage. Now, the thing is that we wanted to consider, we wanted to basically supply to the government. So if we, as our company is confident that it would get its vaccine approved, we would have a contract with the government, and the government would be basically supplying this to the most of the people, right? So that's why even if people bought it for a lower price and tried to resell in US, it wouldn't be so much applicable because most of our supply, we are actually covering 78% of the population, right, of our serviceable market. So as the government is gonna, as we're gonna create an agreement with the government, we are quite ensure that we can sell it to the market.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Hi guys, I have a question. Why did you decide to use gross national income per capita as a proxy for determining the price differentiation and not some other economic or any other indicator?
Anyone would like to answer that?
I guess you can do.
All right. So basically what we wanted to do was we wanted to see the average income of the country. We know that even GDP, GNI both cannot basically account for the inequalities in the population, segment, like inequalities among the population, but we thought gross national income would be a better approach. And other than that, what our target was that we would be trying to contract with third-party organizations and also the government, because ultimately they would be deciding the ultimate price to charge in the market. For example, our price, the US Indian government will be $18, and the other companies we would be lending our basically giving our license to sell. So the ultimate price to the population would be decided by the government. So even if they see that there's a very small proportion of the market who has a very lower income level, they would be selling at a lower price, and it's up to them. But our target was to see an average, like how much well-developed the country is, how much people can afford. So that's why I use GNI per capita.
Thank you.
Hi guys, in your new pricing strategy, you are projecting 70% decrease in COVID cases in 3 years. So how did you come up with that number?
Yes,
I'd like to take that. Thank you. Thank you for this great question. We had quite fun finding that number out. So we like to add the swine flu projections. Now, when the swine flu started, in the long run, like 3 years, more than 3 years later, we calculated a lot and found out that on average, the rate of fall in the cases for swine flu was 60%. Now, obviously, there has been a lot of technological advances and there was a huge improvements in healthcare. So we had a ballpark estimate that for COVID, probably in the long run, we are going to see a fall of, when it starts to fall, the rate is going to be at a rate of 70%, which is why we took that number.
Yes, can I add to that?
Sure, you can add to that.
So what we did was, as per the research done by BBC, with the current amount of risk, a country needs around 60 to 70% of the population to be vaccinated in order to prevent the disease from spreading. But we are considering in the long run that the number of cases will fall down by 70%. So we have assumed that the risk will also decrease by 70%. So previously we were calculating the serviceable market using the 70% of the population, but now after our risk has been reduced by 70%, basically our new ratio of calculating is 21%. So the new market size was calculated by taking into account 21% of the whole population. So that's how we came up with the new market size in the long run.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I guess we can have last question if the judges let me ask the question. You took markup 230, right?
Yes.
So can you explain us the logic behind that seemingly large markup?
Sure. Yes, it seems a very large amount of markup, but as we have seen other competitors give a similar pricing, and we thought of this pricing, this 230% markup won't be bad. And the reason why we charge 230% markup is that we won't be making so much profit from the other markets, right? So we wanted to cross subsidize, like the extra revenue we collected from the US would be used to keep our prices low in other markets. So that's the main strategy why we kept a very high markup in the US market, and we have a patent there. So we would be dealing with governments and creating agreements, and also other firms are also keeping a similar price. So there isn't any basically there isn't any problem in keeping that price. And the GNI per capita of US is also $63,000 per annum. So that's why I think people can afford this at a much more cheaper rate. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Like,
sure.
Add to this one. So you are saying that this high markup is considered because you want to like subsidize your vaccine in other countries, yes? But
Yes.
assuming that the cost of vaccine is around $10 in US dollars, and you are selling it in India, for example, for $18, you are still making a lot of profit. So what's this idea of subsidies?
In vaccine, look, we have studied, we have talked with a lot of different vaccine producers, like the ones who are working in such fields. So what a vaccine company normally does is they try to, because the thing is that when we study or research for a vaccine, there's a lot of cost we have to put inside. And also sometimes the vaccines may fail. So in the long run, they might For example, let's say I'm producing a vaccine at a very, and I'm not so much sure that the vaccine would be turning out to be perfect or not. So I'm encountering a very large amount of cost. And let's say if it fails, then I wouldn't be getting any revenue. So in the long run, for the sustainability of the firm, I have to charge such a high profit. Otherwise, I cannot ensure that I can produce or research on the similar kind of vaccines in the future. So that's the normal tendency for all other pharmaceutical firms to charge such higher markups. So if you consider different firms, they're also in previous diseases, the firms used to make, I think, about 100 to 1,000 times the profit. Like the profit is around 100 to 1,000 times of the cost. But in this case, due to COVID-19 being a humanitarian crisis, we have kept our markup a bit less compared to the other vaccines. Yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Team Bangladesh. Great presentation and great answers to the questions. So keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you for the great questions.
Thank you.
Bye.
So organizers, let us 5 minutes to grade the team. And while we are grading, please let the other team in. So I suppose that the next team is already in the presenters room. So if you're ready, we can start putting up the slides.
Of course.
And giving the control to the one who will be changing the slides.
I have just requested control.
Okay, great. So the next team is Team Brazil, and we will start in few moments. So get the final preparations before your presentation. So, dear participants, dear teams, dear judges, dear organizers, we have Brazil. So, Brazil team, when you're ready, we are ready to listen to you.
Okay, I believe we're ready. May we begin?
Yeah, please start.
Thank you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're Team Brazil, and we'll be recommending our pricing strategy for the new COVID vaccine. Next slide, please. Well, we recommend to launch a 3-stage price discriminating strategy catered towards governments. In our first stage, initially, before our approval, we will have a high volume production to quickly achieve herd immunization in the governments we're catering towards. Then, in the monopoly state, we'll have the first mover's advantage, where we'll be able to charge at marginal cost immediately, and then later a delayed markup. Lastly, in market competition, we will have other entrants to compete with, where we will be battling for pricing and production. So why does this strategy work? Well, we calculated through computational epidemiological modeling to determine the number of necessary vaccines to establish herd immunization in each country. To understand where to price discriminate, we calculated the amount of quality adjusted life years saved per vaccine is stipulating how much the government will be willing to pay to save for their citizens' lives. Then, how this works? Well, we decided to discriminate based on geographical maximization of social welfare per vaccine. Our project has a calculated free cash flow estimated with an estimated break-even of 19 months and a net profit of 5.5 billion US dollars. Throughout this presentation, my colleagues will describe the what, why, and how this project works. Now, delving into what.
We'll be giving some more details into the 3-stage approach my colleague just mentioned. In the first one, before our vaccine is approved, we will start signing contracts with our clients, the local government. This strategy will allow us some advantages, such as setting a distribution chain and gaining some space in this market. In the second stage, after our vaccine is approved, we believe we'll enter a monopolistic regime, which will allow us to charge a 2-part tariff scheme from our clients. Also in this period, we will only charge the first part of the tariff, which is the initial marginal cost price. And later, after a few months, our clients will be paying back the delayed markup. The reason for this two-part pricing strategy is that by charging less in the beginning, we'll avoid social backlash, and it will be easier to conserve our patent, bringing greater stability to our company. After around a year or so, we believe that our competitors will also develop their own vaccines, which won't allow us to charge such a markup. In this situation, we will probably have to charge the marginal costs. Moving forward, my colleague will give some more information about the model.
Now that we know what is our pricing scheme, we need to go on why it works. And for that, we need to begin by talking about the epidemiological model. With this, we're able to predict the number of vaccines required to achieve herd immunity in different countries. First of all, we divide a country's population into 4 categories: those susceptible to the disease, those that have been exposed to the disease, either by infection or vaccination, and are therefore immune, at least for a period, those that are infected, and those who have unfortunately passed away due to coronavirus. The size of each group in a country's population varies and evolves over time according to the following system of differential equations, where we have these equations model the following 3 processes. Firstly, the infections of the appearance of new cases, then the recovery of ill patients, and finally, the fatalities that occur due to the pandemic. This model at equilibrium allows us to calculate the point of herd immunity. That is, at the point where the number of people that are immune is large enough so that the number of infected stops growing on average. And with this, we are able to calculate the needed percentage of the population that must be immune in order for herd immunity to be achieved. And given the effectiveness of the vaccine, which is a parameter of our model, we're able to calculate the fraction of the population that needs to be vaccinated. However, what is the point of this epidemiological model? We can use it to target our vaccination and see where vaccination increases social fare the most. Now, we know that our model shows equilibrium for herd immunity with and without vaccines, which means we'll be able to compare both scenarios, as we see in the right-hand side of the slide. Our epidemiological model gives us both the number of vaccines demanded, but also by comparison with a case without vaccines, the number of deaths averted due to the vaccines. Together with econometric data, we are able to calculate the number of quality-adjusted life years saved. Governments are willing to pay a certain amount for each quality-adjusted life year saved, and this is a well-known thing. So with this, we're able to calculate the total social welfare by simply multiplying the number of quality-adjusted life years saved by how much the government is willing to pay to save each quality-adjusted life year. This, together with the number of vaccines demanded, allows us to calculate the net social benefit per vaccine. We will use this net social benefit in order to calculate our markup, as the amount that we will charge will be proportional to the benefit the vaccine causes, as will be shown later. Now that we know why this model makes sense, let's go to how it works. And for that, I will ask my colleague to go around and show the financial model.
So, utilizing benchmarks, we were able to estimate that our client will need an initial R&D cost in order to get the vaccine done, towering $1 billion. We add to this number another value range, $1 billion, in order to get the initial production, fast inventory of initial production that we will use further on. So we start with initial sunken cost of $2 billion, and during stage 1, in which we are only producing pre-approved vaccines, but not selling them, this cost goes a little further down. But as soon as we enter in the stage 2, we start selling these vaccines, and this make up for the production costs. Remember that at this point, we're going to be selling the vaccines with a 2-tariff contract in which initial value paid is only the marginal cost, but we're going to receive the equivalent markup 1 year later. We decided to sell our inventory to the US government because we could estimate maximizing the social welfare and also maximizing the markup that we could obtain. Right after the sales, we're going to start our third stage, in which we'll be not in a monopolistic, but actually in an oligopolistic market, because there are going to be a few other competitors in this game. And this will cut part of our markup. However, it still be a profitable revenue. A few months later, the US government started paying us the delayed markup, and we achieve our break even by the 90th month. And after receiving the delayed markup from the US government, we are able to keep producing and selling in a worldwide scale, in which we're gonna aim at achieving herd immunity in each country individually. But for having all these numbers, we first need to decide what our markup is, and for that we utilized other benchmarks. We used our computational model to discover how much would be the quality for the influenza, and compared it with the true economic value of this market, the true economic activity of this market. Used this estimative to know approximately how much would be our market activity, and to that we added a benchmark from Pfizer markup. So we decided that our markup over quality per vaccine would be around 3.7% in order to charge a fair amount that wouldn't be too much that wouldn't put too much weight on the countries, but also would be able to make up for our costs. Of course, this could vary, and we address that in our sensitivity matrix. And now we're going to dive into the price schemes and the different markups across countries.
So here we have the main countries where we actually assess the quality and markup. For instance, just to mention, in UK, we got 48.5 million vaccines as a market. We did the same to other countries, and we realized that we should first sell to United States, Germany, and UK in this order, considering the highest social welfare and the highest markup. So we're gonna sell to them according to our production capacity and discriminate through time, as you already know. But what are the risks? What are the next steps? So on the next slide, we get to know that our main risks are price ceilings or patents that we believe they will not be imposed in such developed countries. But our vaccine approval could be delayed. That's unlikely according to what our research team tells us. But and other vaccines could be approved first. That's more likely. but this will just reduce our markup. The same true default payments or anti-vax movements that we need to actually be huge to cause that. So we made this sensitivity matrix. Here we know that we will need extreme market variations or monthly production capacity variations to actually vary our break even. And the worst case scenario is 3 years. So what comes next? We need to focus on establishing contracts, producing and approving vaccines, and later on focus on a smaller market that's private clients. That's basically it. Thank you guys for your attention.
Thank you, Team Brazil. So judges, who wants to start?
Hi guys, thanks for the presentation. I have a rather technical question. How do you calibrate or calculate the parameters beta and rho in the system of the ordinary differential equations? Do you just look it up somewhere or do you calibrate for it?
Yes, I may answer this question. Although I would like that we did so by using values from peer-reviewed papers, so we did not calculate them based on epidemiological data. I would just like to ask that we can have the slides so that we can have the appendices on. Although for this question, I believe that is all my answer. I hope I have answered it appropriately.
Meanwhile, tell me please, are these coefficients different for different countries or are they the same?
We assume that these coefficients would be constant. This is because we are trying to, in order to compare the effect of the vaccine, we compared the situation that would happen if there was no social distancing, because part of the social cost of the COVID effects are the lockdowns, right? So we try to compare a situation in which the status quo, where there's no COVID at all, versus a status where there is COVID and we use the vaccines. So therefore, we believe that the intrinsic variations in the reproduction numbers in different countries that are not due to different, say, government policies regarding lockdowns, these effects would not need to be considered in our model. We will only need to consider the intrinsic differences between countries, not those that are due to different lockdowns. So we could have added this, for example, by saying that COVID spreads more in, say, colder countries or something like that. However, we believe that we don't have a very much scientific basis in order to say what would be the growth rate of COVID in different countries if we didn't have different social lockdown policies. And we believe that it would be safer to just take this approach. I believe it would be simpler and not make our models it wouldn't affect the robustness of our models very much.
Yeah, in addition to my...
So what's the percentage of the vaccinated people needed for the herd immunity to kick in? What was the...
70%.
70%, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So guys, can I ask a question? Can you tell us why you divided the pricing into two? Like first period, it's a lower price. Then in the second period, it is a higher price than it used to be before.
Okay, so actually we divided it into 3 stages, right? In the first stage, we are not selling actually. In the second stage, we have a monopoly and we are selling. We decided to charge a lower immediate price, just covering the production costs, because we thought that most countries would be passing through a recession, and that would be it would be heavy on them to pay more expensive costs for vaccines at this moment. It would be easier for them to pay these costs afterwards. And also we could suffer from some social backlash if we start charging too much for vaccines right now. That's why we use that 2-tariff contract in which they pay the initial cost right now and the markup only later on. And after that, on the third stage, we sell at a lower price because we are, well, according to our model, we based our markup on the basis of the social welfare we are able to produce by achieving herd immunity. However, on the third stage, as we are in an oligopolistic market, there are other firms acting towards the herd immunity of the countries, and thus the social welfare obtained is not only due to our vaccines, and thus we wouldn't be able, not only financially, but also morally, to charge the full markup we were charging in stage 1. That's why we decided, we stipulated that we would be charging a smaller markup on the 3rd stage. I hope I've answered.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I may just complement my colleague's answer, I would just like to make sure that it's entirely clear that when the US government purchases one of our vaccines, they must agree contractually to pay the fixed cost right now, but they also agree at that moment to pay the markup later. This is simply a different pricing scheme. So we are making a profit on these first units. However, we choose to do so by the reasons that my colleague Icaro has mentioned. I hope that the fundamentals of our pricing strategy are clear to everyone.
Thank you. We understand it. And the next question follows the first one. There are always side effects of vaccines. So, for example, in the first period, when you just having the low prices and there are some side effects to your vaccine, then in the second phase, I guess it will be harder to raise the price. So what will be your strategy if you will have like 10% side effects, like having?
I can answer this question. So I believe that this is a risk, an important risk. We believe that if, in terms of social, in terms of public health policy, it's still, if the side effects are not so frequent that it still makes sense for the government to decide everyone should be vaccinated, then our analysis would not need to be changed very much. However, if the side effects are very severe, such that the government believes that only certain sectors at risk, such as healthcare workers or people that are in contact with other people very much, if the government believes that it's only worth vaccinating these people, then we would need to restructure a business plan. I believe that the best way that we could do this is to increase our time in development by trying to reduce these costs, as it's very likely that we would only be able to make a profit if the amount of people vaccinated is very large in order to recoup our early research and development costs. However, we believe that doing this analysis was outside of the scope of the case. Hopefully, does that answer your question?
May I complement my colleague's answer? Adding to that, we may see that side consequences of the vaccination would impose something like a sort of opportunity cost to being vaccinated, and this would in turn reduce the total social welfare obtained by achieving herd immunity. In the end, it would have upon our model a practical effect very similar to diminishing the markup that the total markup we can obtain. So in our sensitivity matrix, when we covered the different markup percentages, it also changes the total value of the markup we may obtain. And thus we may see that even if you charged 1/7 of the total markup we are charging now, we will still obtain break even in about 3 years. So which is considerably fair, at least in our analysis. So we believe that only in the case that the side consequences, only if they were high enough to make the social benefit of vaccinating people against COVID null, only then I think that it would be a really, really, really harm to our model. And even in this case, I believe that the vaccine wouldn't be approved, but our research team, the research team of our client, basically guaranteed us in the case that the vaccinations have vested successfully through the trials. So we believe that it probably wouldn't happen.
Okay, thank you. So we have 2 minutes if anybody has questions.
Yeah, I have the question. Hi guys again. And so from the appendix, I see that your capacity of production is about 23 million vaccines per month. And it lowers after the phase 1. So what is like logic behind these numbers?
Okay, great question. Actually, I thank you for that. we estimated our total capacity production according to benchmark of similar companies because we weren't given this number, so we had to estimate it. And after reaching our stage 3, we choose not to implement our full production capability on COVID because there are other demands that also must be achieved by the company. It can't just ignore all of other clients and other diseases. So we think that it couldn't just let all of its production directly aimed at COVID-19 vaccines for an indeterminate amount of time. That's why we choose to reduce the production.
So have you assessed the potential market of vaccines for these countries, USA, Germany, UK, and so on? Like what will be the potential market and what your market share will be?
I may assume if we could have our appendix back, we have done we have run our epidemiological model for a list of countries, including all of those that were in the table presented in the presentation, and we have the results of these countries in our appendix. I'm not sure if we can put these slides up right now, but we have made that analysis. I would just like to compliment also my colleague's answer regarding the production, just to have a bit of a numerical idea of how much our production was calculated using the benchmark. We used GlaxoSmithKline's vaccine production capability of about 2 million vaccines per day. We said that we would only be able to have 40% of this capability, and that in the short term, we allocate all of this capacity of this production capacity to COVID-19, as it's a very pressing issue. And that's why we believe that it makes sense to reduce this to half its value. So only half of our production capability is used for COVID after a period of 1 year.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Team Brazil. Great presentation and great answers. So thank you. Good luck. And we will wait for the next team to come in and put their slides on. While they do it, we will go and put our grades for Team Brazil.
Can we start now?
Just one moment. Give us like 5 minutes or 3 minutes, and we will let you know when you can start.
Thank you. Dengan jalan. Itu gak selesai. Matiin ya. Pakai akun Lutfi matiin. Ayo pakai akun Lutfi matiin. Cepet.
So guys, I hope you are not tired. I guess it's very late time in Indonesia. So what's the time in Indonesia right now?
11:30 p.m.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So it's
midnight.
Almost midnight. So guys, thank you for joining in. And I see that you have your mics on. So who is controlling the presentation?
We're gonna use the help from volunteer.
You will ask volunteer to change the slides.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So when you're ready, we are ready to listen to your presentation. Please start.
Good afternoon to the honorable judges. Today we are from Team Indonesia Climbers and we are going to present to you Big Pharma's pricing strategy, a price discrimination possibility. Next, please. Next. Okay, so here is our team introduction. My name is Anna and there are my friends Jackie, Lutfi, Giska, and Jessica. Next.
So in this presentation, we're going to talk about 6 content. The first is theoretical framework, issue 3, data assumption, pricing strategy, timeline, and the last is conclusion. Next, please. In this section, I will deliver you about the theoretical framework that forms the basis of our analysis. First is fairness. People's economic behavior is influenced by their point of view regarding fairness, and usually they care about that. Second is price elasticity, a measure of how much the quantity demanded of a good responds to a change in the price of that good. The third is economies of scale, the property whereby long-run average total cost falls as the quantity of output increase. The fourth is price discrimination. Sellers charge customer different price for the same product or service. In our analysis, we use 2 forms of price discrimination, second degree and third degree. And the last is positive externalities, which means vaccination provides indirect benefits to the unvaccinated. Next, please.
To objective our analysis, we use issue 3 with MECE principle. Since Big Pharma is a firm, our main purpose of pricing strategy is to maximize profit by considering 3 aspects: economic, political, and social aspect. First, economy can be divided into 2 factors, internal and external. In internal factor, we are only considering research costs and manufacturing costs. In the external factor, we are only considering competitors in the short run. New entrants will be only happen in the long run since there is pattern in the short run. And then there is no near good or services substitution for COVID-19 vaccine. Second, political aspect. We must considering early agreement with government such as US Operation Widespread. Third, social aspect. Based on fairness and ethics, there is 2 major issues. There is difference in ability to pay between developed, developing, and low-income countries, and then difference in condition and urge to get vaccine in short run, medium run, and long run. Next, please.
So here is our data assumption that we take based into the real world market data. First is cost. For the basic research and clinical trials, it will cost about 150 million to $3 billion. Whereas for manufacturing costs, it will cost about $3 per dose. For distribution costs, we assume that it will be borne by government or other logistic companies. Therefore, we do not take into account this assumption. Second, competitors' price. Moderna will charge about $32 until $37 per dose. Johnson & Johnson will charge about $10 per dose. Pfizer will charge about $19.5 per dose, and Novavax will charge about $16 per dose. For the production plan, we assume that Big Pharma is going to produce 1 billion doses in 2021. And for the partnership, Big Pharma is going to partner with Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and WHO, World Health Organization. For the funding, we assume that they will get the fund from US Operation Warp Speed, which is amounted to $1.6 billion. Next, please.
Based on that assumption that Anna said in previous slide, now we can determine the big pharma pricing strategy to maximize profit. In this analysis, we use the third degree price discrimination, and we will divide our customer into two groups, which are developed countries and developing countries. For developed countries, since they have higher willingness to pay and they have inelastic price elasticity for the vaccine, we can set a higher price without reducing quantity significantly. But for developing countries, since they have lower willingness to pay and they have elastic price elasticity for the vaccine, we must give them lower price. This is because big pharma must take into account the fairness and ethic issues. The example for developed country is United Kingdom, with the market size in April 2021 is 61.19 million people, and the example of developing country is Thailand, with market size in 2021 is 54.48 million people. Next, please. Now we propose plans to get ahead of the competitors, which are the second-degree price discrimination and the geographical prioritization. We know that the second-degree price discrimination is discrimination based on the quantity, and Big Pharma is open for negotiation regarding the average price produced by taking into account the total quantity of vaccines ordered per country. And the second way, geographical prioritization. Big Pharma can maximize future market share by prioritizing countries with the highest urgency for COVID-19 vaccines. Next, please.
So here's our geographical prioritization. First, we pick United States as our prioritization because it has a really big market size, which is 232.988 million people. And since United States has been funding our research and development, so we agreed to give them the first 100 million doses for free. And then the second is India, which also has a really big market size, which is 971.306 million people. And the third is Brazil, which market size is 148.918 million people. But beside these three prioritization countries, we also want to expand our distribution to other developing, and also low-income countries. But if Big Pharma want to expand to low-income countries, it should charge lower price at $4 per dose so that those countries can afford to buy our vaccine. And then in the next slide, I will explain the pricing timeline. In the next slide, please. I will explain the pricing timeline for developing countries and developed countries. Here, we divide the periods into three, which are short run, medium run, and then the long run. For the short run, Big Pharma should charge lower price due to fairness and ethic issue. That is, people feel that pharmaceutical companies shouldn't profiteering during pandemic. But in the medium run, when the urgency has fallen, we can rise the price gradually to gain higher profits. And in the long run, assuming that there will be many competitors entering the market, Big Pharma should lower the price again so that it has a competitive price among the competitors. And here we have two tables, one for the developing countries and the second one is for developed countries. We charge different prices. We charge higher prices for developed countries and lower prices for developing countries. For developing countries, in the short run, we charge $8 until $10 per dose. Because based on our research, developing countries' ability to pay lie between this range of prices. And then we also calculate the cost. And comparing the pricing to the cost, we got the profit, which we can see here that in the medium and the long run, the profit will be higher comparing to the short run. And for developed countries, we charge higher prices. As we can see here, we charge $17, considering the prices charged by other competitors. And comparing pricing to the cost, we also get the profits for the developed countries, which we can see here that in the medium and the long run, the profit is higher than the short run. However, Big Pharma must take into account that this is just a prediction. In the future, if the pricing strategy of competitors differ a lot, then probably Big Pharma must adjust their price as well, either in the higher or lower form. Next, please.
So here is our conclusion. Big Pharma's pricing strategy to maximize their profit, which is the source of funding for their future investment, must take into account economic, political, and ethic motives. Therefore, we recommend Big Pharma to adopt price discrimination policy based on the ability to pay from countries and the time framework, which are short, medium, and long term. Next, please. Next. Okay, here are our references. Next. And then here are our appendix, just like through. Yeah, next. Just, yeah, next. Till the end of the slide. Okay, thank you for listening our presentation. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot, guys. Great presentation. And now we are ready to have questions from our judges.
Thank you, Tim. I have a question. In one of the first slides, you wrote that the production plan is 1 billion doses in 2021. What is the logic behind? How did you calculate it?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Camelia, for the question. We'll try to answer that. So, like in the business case document, you said that the Big Pharma is a multinational company that has the same scale as GSK, Sanofi, and others pharmaceutical company, right? So, like based on our research, GSK has stated that they will produce 1 billion doses in 2021 and continue to produce in other years as well. So that's why we assume that Big Pharma will also take into account that and produce 1 billion doses as well, given that the assumption is that Big Pharma has the same scale company. They are a multinational company that has the same scale as GSK, Sinovac, and others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. If you let me ask a question. So I saw that in US, you want to give free 100 million vaccines, right? So first of all, what is the logic behind it? Another question is that the market size of the US, I suppose will be like 200 million next year. So, and if you give 100 million vaccines, you will shrink the market there. And this is the one question why. And the second risk is that it will, whenever something is free, it feels that the value of that good lowers the value of your vaccine. Don't you think that?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bezak, for the question. Now we'll also answer that. So, like if you see our slide in the data assumption, we also take into account the political. So there we assume that, like from the recent news, they said that the U.S. government has funded like several clinical trials from several companies. For example, they fund the GSK and Sanofi for $2.1 billion, and they also fund the Novavax $1.6 billion. So like the US government do that funding not for free, right? And here we assume that Big Pharma is also their client, so they will also receive $1.6 billion from the US government to fund the vaccine. But in return, Big Pharma must also give the first 100 million doses vaccine for the US government. So like the deal here is that US government is gonna fund Big Pharma for 1.6 billion, but in exchange, Big Pharma must also provide the first 100 million vaccines for US. And then if you calculate the mathematics behind that, that will also result in that one vaccine is about $16 per dose. the calculation behind that funding. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Hi, my name is Nursultan. Great job. I have some questions. For example, your production plan is 1 billion doses in 2021. And how will you split this among these countries? Like, how
Thank you.
much will you, these countries?
Thank you, Mr. Nursultan, for the question, and now we'll try to answer. But for the volunteer, can you please like go back to our slide, like in the appendix 1? We provide the data here there.
Mm-hmm. So I'm on your slide. Market size comparison, yeah? Big Zap, can you share it?
We will ask the organizers or the volunteers to put the slides up again.
It's okay. I have your slides, so I am seeing it. So could you please explain? Like, I see here that you made a market size comparison, but I don't get what will be your market share, for example, in United Kingdom or USA?
Like there will be several appendix that we are going to use to answer your question. First is, let's go to the appendix 1 and 2. Okay, here appendix 1 and 2. So yeah, in 2, right? So in the theoretical framework, we already explained that we will use the theory behind the positive externality, and that is exactly the theory behind herd immunity. So like herd immunity means that you do not need to vaccinate all people, all population in order to get them protected from the virus. You only need to like vaccinate like several percentage of them. For example, if you go to the appendix 1, there you will see that the volunteer, can you go back to appendix 1?
Previously, yeah.
Here, okay. So like here, like to achieve the herd immunity in United Kingdom, for example, they will need to vaccinate minimum of 90 until 95% of the population. This is based on our research. And then for Thailand, they will also need, USA and Brazil, they will also need to vaccinate about 70 until 90% of their population, right? So like we already projected the population in 2021 will be like, for example, UK 67.99 million people, and then if you multiply that with the percentage 90%, then that will give you a number about 61.19 million people. But this is like for one country, right? So if we go to the appendix number 5,
Yeah, so this is the total market size, yes?
Yes, okay. So here is our specific firm market size, right? So in our business case, we are told that Big Pharma is like a multinational company that is equivalent to GlaxoSmithKline, Merck & Co, Sanofi, and Pfizer, right? So in here, we already see that GSK, Merck, Sanofi, and Pfizer, they on average, they have about 20 until 24% market share. So Big Pharma is also like equivalent to that company, and they will have about 22.53% of the total market share. So like from that number, if you multiply that with the earlier numbers in the market size, okay, that will give like the specific number in each country that we target to be our potential buyers vaccine. Thank you.
Okay. And what about the production, the sales in further years? So will it grow over the years, or will it like decrease?
Okay, so
production.
Thank you. So like based on our assumption before, like we already stated that Big Pharma is assumed to produce 1 billion vaccines in the short run, which is projected to be around 2020 until 2021. Okay, so like if you use the logic of demand and supply, during the pandemic in the short run, we will try to produce much. That is like our market strategy to get ahead of the competitors. That's why we make the geographical prioritization. If we go to the appendix number 8 or I think number 7, yes, this. Okay, 7 and number 8. Okay, here, so based on the data that we have gained, we know that Brazil, United States, and India, they are very potential. First, they have a lot of population, and second, a lot of population has contracted the COVID-19 virus, right? So that's why we make them as our market prioritization, because if we first sell that vaccine to US, Brazil, and India, and our vaccine is proved to be working, then other countries will soon follow to order our vaccines, right? So that's why like we first will prioritize in that 3 big market, and then we will penetrate to other markets, for example, like other developing and developed, and then low income countries as well.
Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot for your comprehensive answers, and thank you, Team Indonesia, and thank you a lot. So
thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you for all volunteers and judges. We are extremely happy to be here and really appreciate all your question and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Team Poland. So we wait till they get in and get the control of the slides. And while they do it, judges will put the grades for the previous team. Can we have the slides of Team Poland up? And have we decided who will control the slides?
Okay, can I check if control of slides works actually?
Yeah, you can check.
So Team Poland, please check if the control works. And I suppose that Mikael will get the control, right?
Yes, right.
So is it working?
Actually, no, not yet.
So
check. Please check once again. You have to accept.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
So, hello, Team Poland. We are glad to have you here in the grand final. And whenever you're ready, we're ready to listen to your presentation. Watch your presentation.
Okay,
Alright,
actually, my control of slides does not work. I don't know why. Maybe someone from admins can do it for us.
We can help you. Okay.
Okay, so we will tell you when to change. Okay, thanks.
All right, so dear and audience, my name is Maximilian Mocha, and I would like to welcome you to the presentation of our business case study solution. Our team members are me, Jakub Łaszkowski, Mateusz Gil, Michał Przybyło, and Piotr Kaczyński. Our task was to find a pricing strategy for our client, a pharmaceutical company which has successfully developed a COVID-19 vaccine. To begin with, we'll look into key issues regarding pricing, which will be discussed by Piotrek. Next slide, please.
Now, I would like to tell you main factors that influence the price of a product. We must take into account the political correlations in the world. We also must take care of the opinions of the public. Possible immoral action may result in a lack of access to government funds or a decrease in public trust. We cannot forget that our factories have limited production capacity, so we cannot deliver products to every market at the same time. When we think about production over time, we must take into account that we have great bargaining power in the market for a limited time only. We have to also consider the possibility of the inventive remedy that will lower the economic cost of not getting vaccinated. Next slide, please.
Now let's move on to pricing model. As was said before, our client will sell its vaccine to governments, which will be willing to buy it for two reasons: cost of COVID treatment and economical cost of lockdown. To calculate cost of COVID treatment, we multiplied a number of people hospitalized due to COVID per 100,000 people and average cost of hospitalization, which is approximately $10,000. To figure out an economical cost, we calculated forecasted GDP fall in 2020. More detailed calculations and sources you can find in the calculation sheet. As it is shown in the table, the cost of extremely high. So potential buyers will be willing to pay an immense price for the vaccine in order to put an end to coronavirus crisis. However, we do not recommend our client to charge such a huge price for a few reasons. Firstly, public opinion would strongly denounce such a pricing practice, which would put our clients' reputations at risk. And secondly, governments are afraid of eventual monopolistic power, so they would quickly seek alternatives to the vaccine or would be even reluctant to purchase it. In our opinion, it would be a better choice to charge lower price, ranging from $20 to $40 per dose, in exchange for a government subsidy for further research and development works, which will allow us, our clients, to lower the costs of the production per unit and improve vaccine quality. As a result, we will establish our leadership position on the market in case of other vaccines will have been developed. Moreover, as our clients' limited production capacity will prevent it from expanding to other markets than the European one, it should consider selling a license to vaccine manufacturers on other continents. By doing so, our client will be able to increase its revenues without bearing vast costs of production and transportation, which requires specialized equipment. Finally, pricing strategy has to be adjusted when new competitors enter the market, which might be not only other vaccine producers, but also providers of a COVID remedy, which may be considered as an alternative to inoculating the population. Now, let's move on to key players. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please. To compare the main competitors of our client, we have decided to check their production capacity. As we can see, it differs among producers. The mass production power is located in the EU countries. This indicates that it will be hard to immediately sell them license. Albeit, as the last news show, those companies can also fail. A few days ago, there was published information that the company AstraZeneca, that is cooperating with Oxford University, must halt work. It shows that it's still possible that these companies will fail in the end, and if they fail, their production power will be wasted unless our client provides them with the license. Mainland China production is right now insufficient even for the internal market, so it is reasonable to assume
that they will not expand their production outside People's Republic of China until they vaccinate their population. The limited supply of the vaccine is also the reason why we analyzed geographical circumstances. Next slide, please. We have assumed that the headquarters of the client's company is in Switzerland. Hence, it is not politically involved. As we mentioned before, it is impossible to utilize monopolist position on the EU market. Political and social pressure will lead to PR catastrophe if the company decides to put a too high markup. Hence, we can't charge too much for the vaccines. It is reasonable to sell license for the vaccines to other producers. Firstly, it will bring extra revenue for the company. Secondly, it will provide more people with the vaccine. The target is to sell license to other continents. However, if there will be a profitable occasion in the EU, it should be also contested. Of course, the board is surely curious why we only focus on the developed regions. Firstly, developed nations tend to have a significantly older populations than developing ones. It is well known that COVID is more deadly among elderly people and nearly harmless for the young. With limited production capacity, it is reasonable to decide to firstly provide Western countries with the vaccines. Next slide, please.
Now I would like to summarize our activities over the years. We will have a similar pricing strategy in the short and the mid run because we cannot take advantage of the monopoly rent due to social pressure, as we mentioned before. And in the long run, developed countries will have lower demand for vaccines. So we will have to reorganize our pricing policies. And now I will give a floor to Michał.
Okay, next slide, please. Our strategy for the future. First of all, constant development, further research, and learning by doing. Thanks to these funds, Big Pharma will be able to produce higher efficiency vaccines at lower cost per dose, expecting no side effects on health on people, which is extremely important, especially in case of last events that happened to AstraZeneca and Oxford, which Kuba has already mentioned. Furthermore, we would like to propose bundling, which is selling products, packaging products or services in a one combined unit, usually as at a lower price than a firm would charge customer by buying each item separately. This market strategy will be offered to developing countries as they face epidemics all the time. So, for example, bundling COVID-19 vaccine with yellow fever vaccine. On expansion to other countries, we would cooperate with non-profit organizations and encourage them to distribute a COVID vaccine in third world countries using Kaizen, which is actually a source of competitive advantage. And now I will give the floor to Matteo.
And next slide, please. So now moving on to our math task, we had to calculate the estimated market size in the UK in April 2021. So how did we go about it? First of all, we took historic data and extrapolated them into the future. And then, thanks to our trend line, we estimated the population in April 2021 as more than 67 million people. But we had to correct the data in order to make it more accurate, because in the first half of 2020, there was a significant number of excess deaths reported in the UK, partly due to the pandemic. Therefore, we deducted that number from the total population. However, that seems to be just a one-off occurrence. The number of excess deaths has now leveled out. Therefore, we do not expect any more significant number of excess deaths in the future. Then we checked what part of British population would like to get vaccinated. According to the recent survey, it's 85%. This number might turn out to be lower, but the government would sure like to provide the vaccine to all people who might want to do so. And as a result, we expect the market size in the UK to be more than 57 million people. The number might be a little bit different, but it's the closest accurate we can get with the data we have right now. And now we will go on to the summary.
So the time has come to summarize our ideas. Firstly, we found out that it is difficult to charge high markup because of social and policymakers' approach. Secondly, due to technological constraints, supply of the vaccine is limited. So at the beginning, we recommend selling a license to other continents. In short and mid-term, our strategy does not differ significantly, but in the long term, we advise further development of client's product, which will let it enter the new markets. Furthermore, we recommend product bundling. Now, our presentation has come to an end, and we'll be happy to answer your queries. Thank you.
Thank you, Team Poland. So let's turn the floor to judges. So who wants to start?
Hi guys, thank you for your presentation. I have a question in regards to your strategy. You're telling that you are going to do research and that's gonna be your competitive advantage. But my question is, how are you going to fare well in terms of research as opposed to your competitors? Because in this area, everyone is going to do the research and development.
Okay, so let me answer this question. As for now, we have a vaccine which has been successfully developed and our competitors doesn't. So it turns out that we have more time for research and development for improvements, while our competitors still have to develop the vaccine itself.
Moreover, I would like to add that it is a very technical question, and we don't have this technical data about the company. We don't know how many employees they have, what type of vaccine it is, because it was mentioned in the materials that we get that there are many types of this vaccine that is based on different technologies, and so we can't that easily assume how we will develop the way that it will develop. Of course, we have to develop in order to not fall behind the competitors.
Okay, thanks.
So guys, hi. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question. Will you make any price discrimination between countries? And if you will, how will you discriminate?
So as we mentioned, there are a very limited supply of this vaccine. So in fact, we can negotiate each other license selling with every company, because the fact is that at the very beginning, they will not compete between them, because, for example, if we sell some license to US, they will produce FILSI to US and American origin, because it will be easier to provide the locally produced vaccine to the region. So it will be depend on the negotiation, in fact. Of course, other factors that may be taken into consideration. For example, if you negotiate with the United Kingdom or Germany or countries like this, and they will provide subsidies, it will be also taken into consideration.
Moreover, we will negotiate each contract with each government individually. So it will, in fact, depend on their willingness to pay. And as it is shown in the table on the slide number 3, for example, some countries might be willing to pay a lower price than others, like, for example, European Union countries with low number of contagions and lower GDP per capita.
And so how will you calculate this? For example, you come to the Kazakhstan and the Kazakhstan government wants to purchase your vaccine. And so from what price will you start your negotiations? And what price will be like a floor for you?
So firstly, we don't know what is the cost for the company. of the production for it. We don't know the cost of the developing, so it's very hard to say specific numbers. And also, it will require more specific data that is correlated, that is related to this sector, and that is not publicly how to say publicly available.
And so one of your channels of distribution is selling the license, yeah? So you will sell licenses to local producers, and they will produce this vaccine and distribute in the country, yeah? And how do you think, what are the risks that associated with selling these licenses and how to handle it?
So, like, for example, they can take this recipe and develop by themselves. This is a main risk, and also produce more that there will be in the license. However, there are some, firstly, it would be harder for them to develop because we made some process. We know this, like our client know this process that was made before. So it is easier to develop. Of course, it is a risk, but it must be calculated with knowing more data, of course, because it is a very technical issue. And like if they would break the rules that we have, they break the agreement. The fact is that there are some public WHO organization that can be judges in such a disputes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. I have a question for you. And what's your recommended countries to enter with your vaccine and why?
So as we mentioned, like the main countries are European Union because they're the most production powers located for producing vaccines. So, and moreover, as we mentioned, it is very important to look because this disease is very specific. It attacks mostly elderly people. So it will be easier, even easier in Europe to get this immunity to virus by vaccinating less population, in fact.
Okay. And have you calculated the market size of these countries? How many vaccines do you going to sell there?
So the fact is that in European Union it's like around more than 400 million people. So the fact is that in most European countries, vaccinating for some disease is compulsory. People have to vaccinate, and we can assume that the government will pressure this type of policy if everything will be clear with side effects. So we can assume it. Of course, it would give this say around 450 million people. However, we don't know how many vaccine doses will be needed because, for example, in swine flu, there was a problem because some people need 2 doses. There is also case of the adjunctives. It is, I think that it is the call like this. This makes the doses more efficient, and it depends on the technology. Like we don't know the technology of the vaccine, so it's very hard to say.
Thank you.
We also need to take into account that in some countries, vaccine inoculations are not mandatory, and some people might be unwilling to vaccine for COVID-19.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess we are done with the Q&A session. So thank you, Team Poland. Thank you for your presentation and comprehensive questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So guys, thank you a lot. Next team is Ireland, team from Ireland. So I hope all of the team members are in the presenter's room, and I hope you already identified who will be controlling the slides. So give us a few minutes to grade the previous team, and then we will start in 3 or 4 minutes the presentation of team from Ireland. So hello again, everybody. So we are getting ready to watch the presentation of Team Ireland. So I hope you have identified who will be controlling the slides. Please check if you are.
Yes, I believe an admin will be controlling.
So can you try to check if it's working?
Do you need remote control, or you need to ask to turn on the slides?
Okay. If we can have an admin control it, and we will tell them when to.
Okay.
Change the slide.
I think one of our colleagues is just having some difficulties getting his camera on. Is it okay to start now?
If we have fixed our problems, we might be good to start. So I see that Connor is not, his video is not on.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be letting me, but I can go without it.
Okay, then, so everybody, the participants, the fans of the teams, Everybody, I want to congratulate you with the grand finals final presentation. So it's last but not least, let's start the presentation. So the floor is yours. Team Ireland, go ahead.
Thank you. So hello everyone, my name is Phelan Campbell and this is Team Ireland's presentation for our solution to the IEO case study 2020. The main problem we try to solve in this case study is how our client, Big Pharma Corporation, should price its COVID-19 vaccine. Can I get the next slide, please? So, to determine the best pricing strategy for our client, we focused on 3 key determinants of price: supply, demand, and competition. Our proposed pricing strategy has 4 key principles. The first of these principles is price skimming. So price skimming is a pricing strategy which involves initially charging a high price in order to benefit from the monopoly power that we will have as one of the only suppliers of the COVID-19 vaccine on the market. And then we will gradually reduce our prices as more producers enter the market and competition increases. Our second principle is price discrimination. So because demand and purchasing power is going to vary greatly between the countries to whom we are supplying the vaccine, it will be beneficial for us to price discriminate between these countries, firstly, to maximize our own profit, but also to ensure that more countries can get access to the vaccine. Our third principle is recouping costs. So we want to ensure that our client recoups the costs of producing the vaccine. And then our fourth principle is improving our brand image. So we want to make sure that our client doesn't charge the highest possible price for the vaccine, as this might be damaging to their brand image in the long run. Could I get the next slide, please? So firstly, we decided to look at the supply side. And we decided to look at what costs we will need to cover with the price of our vaccine. So firstly, we looked at manufacturing costs. This includes the cost of land, labor, and capital. We believe that this is going to be very large given the scale of the pandemic and demand for a vaccine. So for example, we've estimated that Moderna's cost per vaccine is approximately $11.10 US, and we can imagine on a large scale how that cost would add up. Secondly, we've looked at transport costs, which we can also imagine will be significant since we have to transport this vaccine around the globe. Recently, the International Air Transport Association has estimated that 8,000 jumbo jets would be needed in order to supply the vaccine globally. So then third, we've looked at storage costs. So vaccines need to be stored at specific temperatures and in a sterile environment. So for example, Pfizer's vaccine needs to be stored at a temperature of -70 degrees. And then lastly, we looked at R&D costs. So these are the costs that our client is going to incur by developing the vaccine, and they will also want to cover these. Can I get the next slide, please?
Hi, my name is Conor Lynn, and I'll be taking us through the demand for the vaccine. So, who are our customers? Here we decided to split demand into various groups so that we can maximize total profit. Firstly, when split on the basis of public/private sector, we discover a small percentage of demand comes from the private sector. Between 5 and 10% is estimated by the WHO in developing countries, and even less in developing. Demand can also be broken down by income, with higher income countries demonstrably more willing to purchase vaccines at prices significantly higher than in low income countries, as you can see in the graph on the right. Finally, demand may come from nation states or international organizations such as UNICEF or Gavi. These organizations allow smaller states to sum their demand and act as a single buyer, using collective bargaining power to negotiate lower prices. These organizations account for 18% of yearly vaccines sold, but 80% by volume. Could I get the next slide, please? So, our model market of the UK market. In order to estimate the UK market share, we have to take into account the predicted population of the UK in April 2021, the wealth of the country, and the presence of the nationalised health system. Given this, we believe that the UK would aim to purchase enough of a vaccine to completely vaccinate the population and account for wastage, following the WHO's estimations on waste during the Ebola epidemic. This leads us to believe that the UK would demand 80.8 million doses, a assuming that one dose is equal to vaccination. Could I have the next slide, please?
Sorry, guys, we don't hear you. Who is presenting?
Oh, sorry, my mic was muted there. Hi, I'm Adam McCourt, and I'm going to talk about the different levels of demand we expect to see over the course of the vaccine's rollout. Obviously, demand won't be the same around the world for this vaccine. For example, Brazil, with a large population of 210 million and a high infection rate, will likely have a higher demand for a vaccine, as it's spreading through a large population relatively fast. Then we have the UK, which currently has a lower but rising infection rate, but with a much smaller population of 65 million. Another important factor is that the UK has a nationalised health system to help with the logistical side of getting a vaccine distributed to the population, meaning the UK government is likely to demand a vaccine for the entire population, plus any wastage that may occur. This shows a medium to high demand compared to Brazil due to the much lower population. With the higher demand in these two countries, we hope to be able to charge them more for the vaccine. As for them, the vaccine is very price inelastic. Charging these countries more lets our clients recoup the cost of the vaccine, but also help us offer the vaccine at a cheaper cost to countries that may not be able to afford the vaccine for their population. However, some countries such as China will have a low demand for our clients' vaccine due to their relatively low numbers of new infections, and also due to the amount of investment and some costs the Chinese government have already put into their own research for a vaccine. So it is unlikely that the Chinese government will buy an outside vaccine at this point, therefore giving China a low demand for our client's vaccine. Can I get the next slide? So apart from different levels of demand at the start of the rollout, there will also be changes in demand over time for the vaccine. At the beginning, there will be likely to be a monopoly on the COVID vaccine, which then lets us charge a higher price, as mentioned before, due to the vaccine being extremely price inelastic. Then moving on into the next year, when new firms join the market, there will obviously be an increase in supply, and any governments who didn't purchase a vaccine before will now likely try to get a cheaper vaccine at this point. Then we move on to the increasing number of people with immunity from getting the virus. This obviously will decrease demand for our vaccine, as there will be less people who need it, as long as gained immunity from the virus lasts for life, which is still unknown. Then the vaccine will finally shift to the private sector, reaching the lowest demand, as private companies will not be willing to buy more than they need. Can I get the next slide, please?
My name is Paul Clark, and I will focus on how our pricing strategy will impact our brand image. Price skimming is a pricing strategy in which big pharma corporations set a relatively high initial price for our COVID-19 vaccine at first, and lowers our price over time as new firms enter the market in order for our firm to stay competitive and maintain our market share. Initially, big pharma corporation has a monopoly power and can control the price of our vaccine in the market. At this early stage, we can charge a higher premium for the vaccine and take advantage of being the first pharmaceutical company to introduce a safe vaccine to the market. However, as evident from the game theory chart, as more firms introduce their vaccine to the market over time, big pharma corporation must take this information into account and lower our price in order to maintain market share, medium profit, and retain our good brand image in the public eye. If our price is too high and other firms sell their vaccine at lower prices, not only will it damage our level of profits, but also our brand image for the future of our company. The optimum strategy for us is to set a high initial price to take advantage of our monopoly position in the market. However, regularly evaluate and monitor our price as new competitors enter the market and adjust our price to compete effectively as per our price skimming policy. This is in order to maintain a good brand image for the future success of our firm. Can I have the next slide, please?
Hello, my name is Luke O'Donovan, and I will discuss how competition will affect our pricing strategy. Currently, globally, there are 8 vaccines in stage 3 trials. This has an impact on big pharma corporation, as any monopoly power on the vaccine production will not be held for long. Firms such as ours will be forced to reduce their price to compete, or their demand will fall as the demand for the vaccine grows more elastic. If I could now bring your attention to the right-hand side of the slide, these are 4 companies who are currently in the race to complete a vaccine. CanSino Bio has released their vaccine and is currently administering it to the Chinese army, although the price is unknown. Moderna is expected to be the first company to bring it to the global market. And as we can see, they are looking to price it at $37 US. AstraZeneca have put a hold to their testing due to a woman falling ill. We expect that their revised time will be sometime close to Johnson & Johnson. As you can see, the market will begin with a price skimming strategy by charging more at the beginning as monopoly power is gained and less at the end as more companies enter. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for giving us your full attention. And from all of us at Team Ireland, we hope you enjoyed. And we'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your presentation. So let's start the Q&A session. Judges, please go ahead.
Hi guys, thank you for your presentation. And my first question is, and what is your actual recommended price for your vaccine?
Well, we recommend that at the beginning, we should probably match the price of Moderna, as we will have a monopolistic market towards the beginning and monopolistic power. As more companies enter, we aim to reduce our price to approximately $15 US eventually, as we see that our cost of manufacturing was estimated to be anywhere from $5.13 to $11.1 US. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. And how did you find this cost of your vaccine? You mentioned like $3 here. Or...
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, we found the basing it off Moderna. They aim to sell their product for $35 to $37 US. Now, according to a pharma analyst by the name of Josh Skimmer, who works with a company called Fierce Pharma, he estimated that the profit margin will be approximately 30% post-tax, which leaves it at $10.50. Now, if you assume the higher rate of price of $37 US, 30% of that would be $11 US and 10 cents. If you go by the industry standards, which was a link given to us by the IE organization, which we are thankful for, we worked it out and estimated that the total cost would be about $5.13 if you were to use industry averages. However, that's not specific to a coronavirus vaccine.
Thank you. And you're saying that you're entering with your vaccine in the UK. Why did you choose UK?
The UK was used mainly as a case study, just as an example of a reasonably high-income country with quite dense population sectors. We would be looking to start in various countries, mainly high-income countries primarily, where we can charge a higher price and therefore profit. But the UK was used mainly as an example just to demonstrate how we're using price discrimination for certain countries and under the justification of saying to higher income countries in order to charge a lower price to other countries. It's good political points nearly for the government to say, oh yeah, we'll pay a higher price, we're helping out the global community. So.
Yep, thank you. And are you going to differentiate your price for the different countries?
Yes, prices will be highly differentiated between the countries. We found that higher income countries were a lot more likely to spend a lot more money on vaccines, sometimes by a magnitude of 4 or 5. And in the market for a vaccine where there's no competition, governments will be quite desperate, both for the humanitarian aspect of it and the political aspect. They want to be the government that deals with coronavirus in their own local country.
Thank you.
Hi guys again. So can you mention like 3 major risks for your company or for your recommendations? And After you mention the risks, can you tell your plan or your thoughts how to mitigate those risks?
I'll start off here. Obviously, one risk that we might have is that the public in developed countries where we're charging higher prices might not be happy that they are paying higher prices than the public in developing countries during a global pandemic. I mean, our main kind of solution to this is the fact that we're actually dealing with the government as opposed to with the public. And we think it's likely that the government will supply the vaccine free of charge to the public. So therefore the public won't actually be feeling that increased cost directly, although we recognize that they might feel it in increased taxation in years to come. But we think that that kind of mitigates the risk that there would be massive kind of public unhappiness about the increased price. And then obviously as well, as Connor said, we can kind of justify it that by charging a higher price in these developed countries, we'll be able to supply the vaccine at or below cost to developing countries who would not otherwise be able to afford it.
Okay, and number 2 risk?
If I could just come in here with a number 2, I think transportation is something that is worth looking at as a risk, considering generally vaccines are transported in glass bottles, etc. It's going to be expensive to transport due to the fact that they have to be kept refrigerated. Now, I think that considering the current state of events worldwide, the epidemiological situation, we actually see that a lot of airlines are actually parking their aircraft and allowing them to sit there. We feel that a global effort to try and unite airlines and maybe offer us their aircraft at cost price could see us allowing to transport this vaccine at very low costs worldwide, especially to countries which are developing, where airlines themselves would see an improved brand image, and they'd be able to also benefit from increased booking to these countries as people recognize the fact that they have made an effort to try and help solve this global epidemic.
So thank you. And number 3 risk, can you come up with number 3?
As a third risk, I would say it's the other pharmaceutical companies getting their vaccines out before they plan to, and us having to cut short our high pricing strategy at the start. To sort of get around this, there hasn't been much information provided on the quality of our vaccine, but we can sort of assume that if other pharmaceutical companies have fast-tracked their vaccine to get out as quickly, that it won't be of as high quality as they were originally planning. So if we can improve on the quality of our vaccine whilst getting out there using some of the profits we've already earned from being the first firm in the market, we can minimize the risk of being losing a lot of customers to these other firms by on the quality of our vaccine.
Hi guys, thank you for your presentation. I want to ask a question about your competitors. For example, on the slide 9, you mentioned that the expected price of AstraZeneca will be $4 for one vaccine. So how do you think it will be really tough to compete with them? Yeah. So what will be your strategy to compete with this company? And what recommendations will you give?
Well, obviously we know that price is considerably lower. However, our plan to compete would basically be based on service. So basically swiftness to market, bringing it out first to gain market share quickly with governments. Of course, if you're ordering in bulk, the company, Big Pharma Corporation, will benefit from economies of scale, which could possibly allow us to reduce our costs even more from the range from $513 that I've already mentioned to $11.1 I think that it is difficult to put an estimation on the cost due to the information available. I think it would require some assumptions which I would not be able to get behind with the accuracy of. However, I think that definitely to compete with them, economies of scale would need to be brought out to compete on price. And other than that, I think we'd have to compete in regards to quality, advertising, and service.
If I could just say, in addition to my colleague's point there, I think that it's unlikely that AstraZeneca would be able to produce enough vaccines to meet the actual market demand. So even if all of AstraZeneca's vaccines sell out at the price of $4 a share, likely there will still be excess demand, which we can then capitalize on, even if our price is higher. And also, we did mention that with our price skimming strategy, we will gradually lower our prices as more competitors enter the market.
And so, how do you think? What will be the number of supply shortage? Like maybe in terms of US market. So what is a potential market? Yeah, initially, potential US market for vaccination.
Well, I mean, whenever we looked at the UK case, we assumed that the government would want to vaccinate the entire population. We understand that this probably would not happen because some people wouldn't feel comfortable with being vaccinated, or other people might not need to be vaccinated. But so we would assume that the government themselves would be aiming to vaccinate the entire population, even if that might not happen. We hadn't actually done any analysis on the US market, so I don't know the number in terms of demand there. But if you looked at the US population and then AstraZeneca's projected production numbers, I would say that we'd be able to get an estimate.
So you're going to start from the UK market, yeah?
Yeah. I think that we hadn't picked a specific market that we wanted to start in. We were more focused on the strategy in terms of differentiating between developed and developing markets.
Well, thank you a lot. Thank you a lot. So we are running out of time for Q&A session. I guess there are more questions to come, but we have to cut the timing here. So Team Ireland, thank you a lot for your interesting presentation and comprehensive answers. Thank you a lot, and good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
this is the end of our grand final presentations. So thank you to everybody for joining and watching, and especially for the teams for presenting their solutions. So I will give the floor to Alexander.
Thank you, Bigzad. Thank you all. I really appreciate your job. It's very interesting to listen to such nice presentations. Thank you. I would like to thank all the CSI partners and Bigzad for the jury work they have done and conducting this part of the Olympiad. I also would like to thank you guys, contestants, for a huge preparation that you have done, and it can be seen that you were really prepared, and for the very interesting presentations you've made here. I also would like to thank the volunteers for their job, for the conducting everything and helping us in all the ways and forms. So I think we will name the winners here, if they're ready. Yeah. So
Alexander, give us a few minutes for to finalize the grading, like 5 minutes, and then let's come back to naming the winners.
Okay, so we'll have a small pause. While it is, I will speak a little bit about the IOX meeting that has been canceled because we have delayed and the schedule has moved into the late night already. For some of you, maybe it's the morning. We will reschedule this meeting for tomorrow. and there we will speak about the projects that we are already conducting, and we will create in the following after the Olympiad month. There were a lot of interesting ideas there. I have to take to cover some time here now, so I will be speaking until our colleagues are ready, and thus I will speak about the things that we were preparing to speak in the evening today. Some of you have already been connected to the IOX, and you know that we have a lot of interesting ideas there, like to make an exchange of students between the schools, like helping you all to get to know each other better and to become mentors in the community that we create, and to communicate effectively, to make some projects of yours that you would like to conduct. We have amazing stories of people who have created their own football team, their own businesses, and all of those people would, I think, really love to get connected to the advisors here. For some of you are mentors, and some of you are very qualified educators, and all of this experience could be shared and be interesting for the people around you. Also, I would love to break the boundaries, to create the elite community around the IO, so that we could maybe make the world better. So, we are ready for the numbers, yeah. So, Bigzat, will you allow me to, do you have the table of the scores? Do you see it? Can you name the winners?
I guess I will give the floor to you.
Okay.
So we are done with the grading. So grading was really tough. The presentations were really great. The guys are great public speakers. You see that team spirit in each team is very high, and the calculations, assumptions, all the economic and business approach is very top level. So it was very hard for us to grade, but guys, so just the final words from me. So all of the teams are winners, and I hope that you learned a lot from this exercise, and I hope that this exercise and the approaches that we covered, I hope they will be useful not only in your professional but in your life terms. So thank you a lot. Thank you for your great, and we learned from you as well. I need to mention that. And
Maybe,
Alexander, so the floor is yours.
Maybe before we name the winners, you could give some feedback about what common good ideas have been stated, and what commonly could use some of maybe more attention, from the teams, so that they could get even more perfection in their speeches, in their work, like a business case solvers.
So, okay. All the teams that I was happy to hear, they all covered like the whole world, like the breadth of the analysis was very good. So as we see that there wasn't analysis that neglected some other parts of the world, so Another thing is that there was a prioritization in their solutions. So they said that there are different pricing schemes, and then they said that there are different geographical approaches, how they want to approach, and it was good. So most of all, what amazed is the public speaking skills of our presenters. So public speaking skills and team spirits, what we can underline. And what is to improve is that it's learn to structure your not only analysis, but the reasoning, why you are suggesting some kind of recommendations. Another thing might be that you want to improve is the top-down, like a top-down approach. You mention, first of all, your recommendation or your conclusion, and then you go on supporting that conclusion. And the more numbers you have in the supporting statements or supporting graphs, the more convincing your recommendation solution is. Yeah. So, and another thing is that you might also add to your presentations or to your statements the risk sides. What are the negative sides of your conclusions? That will help your client or somebody who you are helping to make more balanced, more weighted decisions. Yeah. So
thank you. So we come to the most important part. Our 6th place in the business case challenge of the International Economics Olympiad of 2020 goes to Poland. Hooray. The 5th place of our Olympiad goes, of our business case challenge, goes to Ireland. The 4th place goes to Indonesia. The 3rd place goes to Bangladesh. The 2nd place goes to Latvia. And the 1st place goes to Brazil. Congratulations. Guys, you were amazing. Thank you. So I will leave you to partying. Don't go hard on this, okay? We still have moderation tomorrow and some meetings, some interesting lectures. And see you all. We will name the whole list of the results in business cases on the closing ceremony. And we'll see you then. Thank you. Bye.
thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye. Thanks.